right. Just a few short words, and then I'll share with you this morning. Actually, I want to begin with an illustration. Sun's starting to come out. What a beautiful day. We have a lot of Canadian geese around here. You notice that? They're everywhere. They're just everywhere. I got a little pond at my house, and some of them will end up in my pond, So, anyway. But there's actually a true story of a Canadian goose, and he was flying across the farmland of a Kansas farm on a fall day. And for whatever reason, it had gotten separated from the rest of its flock. But as the goose flew, it saw a pond below that belonged to Farmer Jones. And Farmer Jones had Toulouse geese in his pond. Now, if you don't know anything about Toulouse geese, they're chubby. They're a big, fat breed, and they're so heavy they probably can't even fly. So the Canadian goose, even though it was a different shape and color than the other geese that were there in the farmer's pond, it soon found out that it was accepted as part of the flock, if you may. And so this Canadian goose hangs out there for a day, and the day turns into a week, and the week turns into a month, and then it just hangs out for the entire winter. Farmer Jones was married, had a really nice, kind, sweet, gentle wife, and every day she would get a bucket full of cracked corn, and she would go out to the pond and she would feed the geese. And the Canadian goose, it was digging this lifestyle. This works. This really works for me. So finally, as winter passed and spring's beginning to approach, and the wild geese were flying north again, this Canadian goose looked up, and he could hear the honks of his fellow geese flying by, and he was stirred with a kind of a strange thrill to join his old comrades in flight, but try as he might, couldn't get off the ground. Couldn't get off the ground. He had become so soft and heavy that he could not rise to be with his old friends and family. So he went back to the pond again and said to himself, oh well, my life is safe here, and the chow is good. But from then on, every fall and every spring, when he heard the wild geese honking overhead, his eyes would gleam for a moment, and he would flap his wings. Not really going anywhere, but he'd flap his wings. And he did this for many years. But each year it got less and less until one day he just paid no attention to them at all. So the lesson at this point is pretty darn obvious for the discerning. One can become satisfied with the way things are and complacent with the way things ought to be. The soul can forget its high standards and ideals and be content with living with lower things. The greatest danger to a believer in Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, is to become content. To become content with lower standards than what God wants for you and me to live. The danger is to become half-hearted in living out our faith. That's why we're a very small congregation. And the reason is because much is expected. Complacency and indifference for your faith walk are real dangers. Listen to the wisdom of Solomon. For the waywardness of the naive shall kill them, and the complacency of fools shall destroy them. Let me give you two symptoms of complacency. Satisfaction. Satisfaction, the way things are. This works for me. Food's good. Company's okay. Message doesn't challenge me too much. God loves me. His grace abounds. His mercies are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. What more do I need? And then the second is rejection. Rejection of things as they should be, as God desires them to be. You know, wise man once said, when everything is said and done, there's a whole lot more said than done. It's true. So the temptation that Abraham's father Terach succumbed to surrounds everything that we do, brothers and sisters. Critical mass, however, is reached when the temptation of Terach engulfs our spiritual obedience, our journey of faith from God. Now, most of us have made our acquaintance with the inspiring obedience of Terach's son, Avram. And I'm sure appearing soon, if it hasn't already happened, will be a distorted view of his life written by and produced by some Hollywood atheist, like the movies Noah and Moses. But we have admired Avram's faith as he set out to find a city that he could not see, believe for a son that he could not hold, and trust for a miracle that couldn't possibly be conceived. With Avram, there was less talk, and there was a whole lot more do. That's what faith is, brothers and sisters, in case you'd forgotten. His faith was active. Such faith described in the Hebrews Ivrit as being confident of what we hope for, convinced about things we do not see. And yet the antithesis of Avram's pursuit of God's promise, spanning more than 2 decades without physical evidence, is seen in his father Terach. While Avram walked by faith and not by sight, Terach camped in fear and complacency. Unlike his father, Avram was neither paralyzed by prosperity nor persecution, neither blessing nor barrenness, neither temptation nor time. Avram pursued a promise of Hashem. He pursued a promise that God had made to him. He didn't just sit back in his chair and say, well, I'm waiting, God. He went after it. He pursued the promise. And Avram became a different pursuer. Now Avraham, renamed by God and justified by faith. And it would do us all well to take a look at and learn from the temptation that tantalized Terach. Because not doing so, we too might lose sight of our higher calling that was realized a generation later in his son Avraham. So, taking a look at what tempted and tantalized Terach can be summed up in a few points. The first point is, fear can cause you to camp out in Haran, or Haran in Hebrew. Fear can cause you to remain camped out in Haran. Unlike many of us, Terach, Avram's father, was an idol maker. Aren't we all? When we think of idols, we think of some sort of physical object, and that was the case with Terach. But as we know as believers, idols don't have to be a physical object, do they? It could be something we value, something we're faithful and loyal to, something we follow, something that causes us to choose it, whatever it is, over and above what God desires for our life. So for whatever reason, perhaps seeking a financial opportunity or following Hashem's calling, he set out on a journey with his two remaining sons, Avram and Nahor, and their wives from their home at Ur of Chazdim to the land of Canaan or Canaan. But Terach, Avram's dad, he never arrives. We read in the closing verses of last week's Parashah Noach. Instead, he stops short in Haran. And there he chooses to stay for the rest of his life to the ripe old age of 205. Sometimes I feel about 205. And he perhaps came to some sort of crossroads. Don't we all? Don't we all come to certain crossroads in our walk and our faith? He came to some sort of crossroads in deciding to press on or to settle in Haran, which, by the way, in Hebrew means crossroads. So the mentality goes something like, well, dude, at least I'm not back in idolatrous Ur. Haran's not so bad. Besides, God could have me use wisdom to avoid the Canaanee. Brothers and sisters, fear paralyzes us. And if you don't believe it now, in the times that we're living in for the last year and a half to 2 years, you need a good shot of awakening. Because what's going on in our world today has nothing to do with fact or science. It has everything to do with fear and control. And if you haven't figured that out yet, then I would challenge you to do a little bit of reading and a little bit of praying, because fear has paralyzed our world as we know today. The Canaanee were a force to be reckoned with. And in the end, really, it was all about perception. When confronted, do we see the obstacle or do we see the opportunity? With all that's going on in our world today, are we looking at it as an opportunity as a people of God, or are we looking at it as an obstacle to the life of comfort and complacency that we want to live? Not long after his father passes, Hashem tells Avram in the opening verse of this morning's parashah, Lech Lecha. Get yourself out of your country to the land I will show you. Get up. Get moving. Up front, God sells them on the idea, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. And then the fine print comes, which is the Canaanee were then in the land. And Avram knew what the deal was with the Canaanee, the people of Canaan. He knew they were serious warriors. He knew he was up against some serious odds here. And like I said, Avram obviously understanding, as perhaps his father did, that, again, they were a force to be reckoned with. The difference where fear stymied Avram's father, Terach, faith, a power greater than the obstacle the Canaanee posed, inspired Avram to press on. His father quit. He camped out. But the son said, no, let's do this. Let's face our fears. Let's move forward. You know, like fear, the second point, sorrow can also cause you to camp out in Haran. Because just prior to departing for Canaan, Terach's son Haran, he dies. And no doubt his heart was heavy as he left his son's tomb behind. And the mentality goes something like this. I left out of Ur for you, God, and this is what I get. I honored your word and my son dies. You called me to do something, and my reward for my obedience is my son dies. And you can understand how he might feel a degree of resentfulness or bitterness. Proverbs 17, verse 22, merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. See, our task is not to understand God nor demand an accounting from him, which we often do, for what transpires in our lives. We are to simply obey God and to love God. Because Yeshua made it clear, if you love me, you will obey me. I think the concept of love today is the most misunderstood concept I've ever heard in my life. We had no clue what love is in this society and world today. At least they have love. What do you mean they have love? How do you know what love is? You know, Foreigner, they want to know what love was. Lou Graham wanted to know what love is. Well, you found out, actually. You got, the Lord entered his life. He careful what you asked for, he found out. He found out Yeshua is love. And obedience to Yeshua is love. Amen? But, again, we are simply just to obey God and to love God in doing so. And though he slay me, the scripture says, yet I will trust him. Fear, sorrow, and satisfaction. Satisfaction can cause you to camp out of Haran and not move it forward. And maybe it was the barrenness of Sarah's womb that drove Avram to a mentality of desperation to pursue a promise. Maybe it was the fullness of Terach's home that made him content with partial obedience. Realize you can't be content being called out from Ur. Your salvation, if you have to remember, your salvation is only half fulfilled when you are called out of the world. That's only part of the process. It's not complete yet. God has not only saved you from the world, but he's also saved you to his glory. We've yet to ascend. We are a work in progress. Our destination is the Father's house. We're not there yet, as long as we're still breathing. God has saved you from this world. But again, our journey to his house is yet to be taken. Abraham was not content growing in a household that only birthed the minimum of salvation by separation from idols. An addict might say, well, I'm not using it anymore, so that's all it is, right? No. That's just part of the process. Any sin, just because you're not sinning consciously or deliberately anymore, doesn't mean somehow that's the end all. That's just part of the process. Avram had forsaken the world, but he has to pursue another world. He's got to pursue the kingdom. Remember, God's plan will always be pursued beyond your years. Long after you're gone, Abraham pursued a city he would never see. David desired to build a temple he was not permitted to build. Rabbi Shaul Paul desired to journey to Spain and preach the gospel. Well, sorry. God will always give you a mandate bigger, greater than you could possibly fulfill. That doesn't negate you from pursuing it. Whatever goal the Ruach HaKodesh has called you to, it is something you can accomplish in your lifetime. Don't allow satisfaction to leave you complacent in Haran. Don't make up your mind pragmatically. Gosh, I wonder if I can accomplish that. It doesn't matter. You pursue it. You pursue it nonetheless. And maybe you won't complete it. It doesn't matter. The sister's right. What matters is your obedience to the call upon your life to do whatever you're called to do. Long after I'm gone, the Star and East will probably explode in a massive revival and there'll be 5,000 people coming here. Doesn't matter. It doesn't. My job is to facilitate what God has put before me and to pursue that goal that all people face the revelation of what the way of Yeshua looks like. And we haven't gotten anywhere near it yet in the body of Messiah. We're just too busy trying to get saved and get our ticket into the kingdom. But we are absolutely clueless about the desires of God's heart and how he wants us to live. We just keep spewing out love and grace, and we don't even understand those concepts and what they really mean. God's call is to a new generation. Yeah. A new generation is not satisfied regurgitating religious ritual. We've done that. Your parents have done that, and your parents' parents before. Regurgitating this ritual. For what reason? Get out of my country. Leave the culture, language, religion you are familiar with, is the call to Avram. Get out from what is familiar. Leave every relationship that would entangle you or remind you of your life before the call. Get out. Get out from thy father's house. Forsake the wealth bequeathed you by your inherited complacency. Forsake everything, but cleave to his call. Cleave to his call. Embrace only this word. Forgetting those things which are behind, I press on to the mark of the high call of God that is in Messiah Yeshua. That's what it is to be a follower of Yeshua and to press on, to pursue the higher calling. And you will leave family, friends, traditions, places. You'll leave them behind. You won't be comfortable. You won't be satisfied. Where are you going? To a land I will show you. Just get up and get going. God did not even tell him about the land. Whether the land was good or barren, was hot or cold, north or south, he didn't say. The promise was veiled as a future promise of another revelation, as if to say, you're not ready to see it. You're not ready to see it until you prepare yourself through obedience. Think about how many choices you might not have made if you really knew what the end result was going to be. If you really knew the beginning from the end. If you really knew all that it entailed. How many choices would you step back and go, oh, wait a minute, you didn't tell me about all that. I don't know. We need to talk about this. I think there'd be a lot of choices that wouldn't get made if God had revealed the beginning from the end. You know, when there's two things that I struggle with at home. One's the microwave. I'm going to tell you why. How do we know how long to put something in the microwave? Where's that written? Where's the manual? I mean, seriously, think about it. When you put something in the microwave, how do you know? You put it there, you go, 30 seconds? 40? A minute? A minute and a half? I don't know. You just kind of wing it, don't you? Come on, you know I'm telling the truth here. Don't look at me like I'm like making some bizarre item. You know that I'm telling you the truth here. And all too often, well, maybe I shouldn't put it in for too long. So I'll just put it in for a little bit and see how it is. So you put it in for like about 30 seconds or something. It's still cold. I hate it when it's cold. So then you go, well, maybe it'll take another 5, 10, especially with butter. I put frozen butter in. If you go 2 seconds over, you got a mess, right? Right? How do you ever figure that one out? I got it down to about 7 to 8 seconds. That's about it. Take a hard second. About 7. I figured it out. Okay? And with the wash, too. Oh, my gosh, the dryer. How long you put stuff in the dryer? Do you know? Is there something, you look at this pile of clothes and you go, this looks like about an hour. Where is that? Who gave you that perception? You don't know. You don't know how long you have to put those clothes into the dryer. You kind of wing it. Well, should I put it in high heat, medium heat, an hour, hour and a half? I don't know. Do I use the wrinkle-resistant stuff? I don't know. But ultimately, we take a conservative track and everything ends up half-heated. The answer to finish the task and to get our food or our clothes completely dry or food completely heated is the answer to complacency. You don't know, but you get up and you go. You put the clothes in the dryer and you do the best you can with what you know. You put it in by faith. You're going to hope that you have it right, and you don't always have the answer. The food might not always get heated right away, and the clothes might not get dry all the way, and you might have to put them in for a little bit longer. But you don't give up. You get up and go. You complete the journey. You begin the journey of discovery. You continue the journey like Abraham did. You don't settle halfway. You don't leave your clothes half dry. You don't leave your food half cooked. You don't settle halfway like Abraham's father Terach, satisfied and complacent amongst the chubby Toulouse, rather than soaring towards the mark with the Canadian geese. The truth is, the middle ground, which almost everybody loves to take, right? Everybody likes the middle ground. I'm an extreme guy. I know it'll shock a lot of you, but I'm an extreme. I am. I know that I'm extreme. I know that when I have an absolute conviction on something, I'm extreme about it. I appreciate that, and I thank you for your grace in dealing with me. My wife, pray for her. But my son, Michael, he's not an extreme guy. He kind of is humored by my extreme. You know, he looks at his dad and he goes, he's extreme. You know, Michael's more, he's more of a peacemaker, like his name, Shalom. Okay, I'm extreme. And I know that, and I can't take the middle ground. I can't take the middle ground on something. Either it is or it isn't. Where is middle ground? In geography, where's the middle ground? If you have two peaks, where's the middle ground? It's a valley. It's a valley. It's a valley, and that's where all the water collects. That's where all the water, it's the lowest ground. It's a place where we pause and reflect, yes, but you don't settle there. You don't settle for the lower ground. Why do people go rock wall climbing? Why do they climb mountains? Why do they do that? You know, the answer is, because it's there. What kind of logic is that? But we're compelled to do it, aren't we? We're compelled to climb the summit, to go to the high point. It's our nature to do that. We don't settle in the valley. Benjamin Mays, he was commenting on complacency. It's a great word here. This is what he has to say about complacency. The tragedy of life, hear me, young and old, the tragedy of life is not found in failure, but complacency. And a lot of coaches have talked about this too. The tragedy of life is not found in failure, but complacency, not in you doing too much, but doing too little. Not in you living above your means, but below your capacity. It's not failure, but aiming too low that is life's greatest tragedy. Aiming too low. Yeshua would rather have you love or hate. Make up your mind. God cannot stand the resulting indifference from complacency. He hates it. You know what the lowest people are? The middle road people, the agnostics. Those are the lowest people. Agnostics. They claim neither faith nor disbelief in God. Right down the middle. They don't claim anything. That's the lowest people. He would rather have you alive or dead, not living as the walking dead. See, the temptation of Terach that so many in the body of Messiah have succumbed to is to settle where you're at. and not continue to where Hashem is calling you. And that's why we run people right out the door from here. Because you can't stay where you're at to be here. I'll blow you out of these doors in about a year. And I don't say it proudly, but because of the teaching that goes forth here and what Yeshua is showing us in his word and way, most believers cannot possibly handle it. And you know it's true. You've seen them come and go. I have multiple stories, and I don't say that again pridefully. But he doesn't want the walking dead. He doesn't want you to be safe in the pond. We're water. Brothers, believers today are watered and fed by the pastors that want to keep us there filling up the pond rather than flying off and rising up to higher places with the Lord. Because if it weren't true, if they're really trying to get you to rise up, the average person could not sit in that chair. It would be too much for them. We stay in the pond, brothers and sisters, because leaving, we would have to flap our own theological wings. We would actually be accountable and responsible for what we believe, rather than just letting it be spewed at us by some middle-of-the-road pastor who doesn't want to do anything that possibly offends you and run you out the door. We stay in the pond because the enemy of the unknown strikes fear in our hearts. We stay in the pond because our hurts and wounds are ministered to, and therefore we never have to experience pain anymore. No more pain of rising up from them and leaving them behind. If you're an addict, you're forever in recovery. You're a recovering addict. Well, I got something for you, addicts. Why not a delivered addict? Why not a saved addict? That was one of my first papers in seminary. And I was raised in Akron, Ohio, Dr. Bob's house in Highland Square. I lived close to Dr. Bob's house. And I'm telling you that if you say you're in constant recovery seeking a higher power, you're not seeking Yeshua, because Yeshua will deliver you and redeem you. So that's where Dr. Bob was flawed, and everybody who are following 12-step programs. Too many of our brothers and sisters are settled in the pond of Haran, located at the crossroads of decision. You never decide. As my grandma said, poop or get off the potty. We've heard that. Never deciding. Never pursuing. Never moving forward. Says A.W. Tozer, complacency is the deadly enemy of spiritual progress. The contented soul is the stagnant soul. Many of you have been in covenant relationship with Yeshua for years. I got a question for you. Most believe in Yeshua for 10, 20, 30 years, a lot of you, right? Some of you have been in marriages that long. I bet there's marriages here 50 years. Anybody 50 years? Right? 40 years? 30 years? Well, let me ask you a question. Are you still pursuing your spouse? Are you still pursuing them? Think about it. You're complacent. They're there. You wake up every day with them. You have meals with them. You travel. You have things that you do together. Do you pursue them? Sorry. Ran a few more out the door. Doggone, somebody will be mad at me today. But God wants to be pursued. Praise the Lord that he saved us. Praise the Lord for the sacrifices Yeshua made on our behalf. But we're in a covenant relationship with God. And one, like Abraham is showing us, is to be pursued. You should be pursuing your bride or your groom as much as the day that you ask them to marry you. You should be pursuing them more than that day. Because now you know what you got. And you know how blessed you are. And they should have left you a long time ago. So, yeah, praise the Lord, they're still with me after they found out what I'm really about. And that's their grace, and that's their love for you. And you should thank them, and you should praise them, and you should chase them and pursue them as you do the Lord, because the Lord found out what you're all about. And we're fallen. We're despicable human beings with a yetzer hara, an evil inclination, and that's why we need a Savior. That's why we need a Savior. The pond of Haran was a place of decision, not unlike the mikvah, the baptismal pool, a place to decide whether to stay where you're at or to actually go into the water with everybody, because we are part of a community. To stay where you're at or to fly together, pursuing the depths of what relationship and love truly can be. Real love, again, does not settle. Real love does not settle. Real love is never complacent. If you love God, if you love His Son, if you love His Word, if you want His way for your life, then you will pursue Him. You will have a passion for the things that He has passion for. Where are you right now? Where are you? Where are you right now? Think about it. Ask the Holy Spirit that question. Am I just floating in the pond? Am I real comfortable, well-fed? Isn't that why you choose a congregation? Ask anybody. Why do you go there? Well, because I'm really well-fed there. That's always going to be the answer. Am I wrong? Yeah, I go there because they really feed me the word there.